It's nice to see lots of us here today. And our online Sangha. My voice is a little croaky. I've been sick for a couple of days. But I'm fine now. One thing you could say is that this is a story, that there is a reality. It's just an unknowable reality. It's just so vast and so tiny that we just can't comprehend it. But it doesn't mean that we can't find a way to interact with reality that is more in accord with whatever it is. It's more wholesome and beneficial with that reality that we can't comprehend. And in a way you could say this is what Buddhism is. It's a story system that's doing its very best, Shakyamuni Buddha and all the ancestors doing their very best to try and present a way to describe reality that can't be described, but to describe reality and the way our consciousness interacts with reality that is as accurate as possible so that we can be functioning in a way that is life-affirming. And I have fairly strong trust that the teachings that we have, the sutras and the stories that we tell in our tradition do a pretty good job of describing this unknowable world and describing how, with our senses, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, and our mind, how we apprehend and experience this world and how we interpret it and translate it. I think it does a pretty good job. And maybe one of the ways to tell whether it's doing a good job or not, or whether we're doing a good job with the storytelling we're using, is what level of sustained kind of calm and joy we have. Not the kind of calm, peacefulness or joyfulness that you can have because certain external conditions all come together nicely. Everybody gets those times. But as a sort of a steady undercurrent in our experience, or an overlay, you could say, of our experience that has a degree of calm, confident, caring, stability, but happiness, all flavoured together. I think that's a pretty good indicator. If we have that, then probably the storytelling that we're doing is a better descriptor of this unknowable world. And we're all telling stories. You know, we talk to ourselves all day in our heads. We're constantly talking and we're generating different stories about different aspects of reality. And some of us have got a particular mental habit. You could say it's like a piece of coloured glass in front of our eyes that experiences the world through a very particular bias that we may have. We might have some kind of bias of superiority or inferiority or of victimhood or of specialness or whatever it might be. So sometimes people, all of us to some degree, but some more strongly than others, have a particular sort of like coloured lens. And some of the time we're looking at this vast reality a little bit like through a hollow reed looking at the sky. We're just seeing a teeny little part. But we might be telling us the story that is it, that it's the whole thing, that what we're seeing is the whole world. The tiny little bit that we're seeing, we're saying, that's it, I've got it. I know what the world is. So whatever way that we look through the world, whatever filters we have, we can notice the effect they have on our body and on our state of mind. And if we have an agitated state of mind, I think we can be fairly confident that the lens that we're looking through, that the story that we're telling is off the mark, more so than at other times. So it's just like a lifetime of fine-tuning what stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and the world. And I think, unfortunately, some of the most powerful people are just extremely good storytellers, and they're not always telling wholesome stories. We have to be really careful about the stories that we hear, because just because they have a seductive quality to them doesn't mean that they're right. And even if they superficially sound like they make sense, they may be really, really far off the mark. And the way that we're taught in the tradition as practitioners, part of our meditation practice is that we can listen very quietly and very closely to our body and the patterns of thought that we're having, to see whether these stories that we're hearing and maybe starting to believe, what effect they're having on us. And if our mind is more agitated, it's a good indicator that maybe the story is far off the mark. So that's what I do. I notice, and it's like many times throughout the day, you might have a certain difficulty and you try one way to solve it and you feel quite good about that. And then something else happens and you try a different way to solve it, and then you find yourself having a thought that's looping over and over and over, maybe a defensive thought about yourself or about them, about the situation. And so I notice if I'm starting to have a repetition that seems to have a kind of unsettled, sort of restless quality to it, then I try and see if I can slow right down even more. Hear, what's the story I'm telling? And good, often the story dissolves a little bit. And sometimes gets dissolved and nothing particular replaces it, but that story that was off the mark, just too much off the mark, just fades out. And then sometimes beautifully, spontaneously, a slightly better story arrives. You can feel it's a better story because you feel more at ease. And maybe a good idea on what to do next just appears in the mind. So it's the mind that generates our happiness, our joy, and our sadness. And the mind is also actually, it's not just the world out there and we're just experiencing it as if they're two separate things. Whatever we do with our mind influences what we do with our words and with our bodies, and that is changing the world. So it's a dynamic interaction that's going on. So we're influencing this unknowable world. So I've just been thinking about stories. And that's probably because I've been reading this book, which I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Opening the Door of Your Heart by Ajahn Brahm, that Tony told me about. And a particular story. I think one of the places that our internal storytelling can get very challenged and become very much like looking through a tiny little tube, seeing only a tiny little bit, is when we have something very difficult that's happened. Often when something really difficult has happened to us, something very unfair, just very challenging, very hurtful, very sad, very frightening. Often our breathing gets so shallow and our thinking gets so fast that we can't tell ourselves a complex story. And instead we tell ourselves a very simple story. And simple stories often have sort of good guy, bad guy kind of dynamics in them. The stories get very simple. So particularly when we have something challenging, that's the exact time to return to our Zazen practice, whether it's on the cushion or just settling our mind, turning the light around, looking closely at what's going on in my mind, what are the patterns of my thinking, how am I making it worse, possibly making it worse. So challenging times are the spot where the storytelling is at risk of becoming harmful. So this is a story about difficult times and how we might not even interpret difficulties as difficulties. It's a little bit long, a couple of pages. A truckload of dung, like cow manure. Unpleasant things like coming bottom of your class. There's a previous story which I get a chance I'd like to read because it's very cute, about a kid coming last in class. Unpleasant things like coming bottom of your class happen in life. They happen to everyone. The only difference between a happy person and one who gets depressed is how they respond to disasters. Imagine you have just had a wonderful afternoon at the beach with a friend. When you return home, you find a huge truckload of dung has been dumped right in front of your door. There are 3 things to know about this truckload of dung. 1, you did not order it. It's not your fault. I just can't help but say something like you didn't accidentally order it on Amazon or anything like that. 2, you're stuck with it. No one saw who dumped it, so you cannot call anyone to take it away. And 3, it's filthy and offensive, and its stench fills your whole house. It's almost impossible to endure. In this metaphor, the truckload of dung in front of the house stands for the traumatic experiences that are dumped on us in life. As with the truckload of dung, there are 3 things to know about tragedy in our lives. 1, we did not order it. We often say, why me? 2, we're stuck with it. No one, not even our best friends, can take it away, though they may try. 3, it is so awful, such a destroyer of our happiness, and its pain fills our whole life. It's almost impossible to endure. There are 2 ways of responding to being stuck with a truckload of dung. The first way is to carry the dung around with us. We can put it in our pockets, some in our bags, and some up our shirts. We can even put some down our pants. We find when we carry dung around, we lose a lot of friends. Even our best friends don't seem to want to be around as often. Carrying around the dung is a metaphor for sinking into depression, negativity, or anger. It is a natural and understandable response to adversity, but we lose a lot of friends because it is also natural and understandable that our friends don't like being around us when we're so depressed. Moreover, the pile of dung gets no less, but the smell gets worse as it ripens. Fortunately, there's a second way. When we are dumped with a truckload of dung, we heave a sigh, and then we get down to work. Out comes the wheelbarrow, the fork and the spade. We fork the dung into the barrow, wheel it around the back of the house, dig it into the garden. This is tiring and difficult work, and we know there's no other option. Sometimes all we can manage is half a barrow a day. We're doing something about the problem rather than complaining our way into depression. Day after day, we dig into the dung. Day after day, the pile gets smaller. Sometimes it takes several years. But the morning does come when we see that the dung in front of our house is all gone. Furthermore, a miracle has happened in another part of our house. The flowers in our garden are bursting out in richness of colour all over the place. Their fragrance wafts down the street so that the neighbours and even passers-by smile in delight. Then the fruit tree in the corner is nearly falling over, it's so heavy with fruit. And the fruit is so sweet, you can't buy anything like it. There's so much of it that we are able to share it with our neighbours. Even passers-by get a delicious taste of the miracle fruit. Digging in the dung is, of course, a metaphor for welcoming the tragedies as a fertiliser for life. It is work that we have to do alone. No one can help us here. But by digging it into the garden of our heart, day by day, the pile of pain gets less. It may take us several years, but the morning does come when we see no more pain in our life, and in our heart, a miracle has happened. Flowers of kindness are bursting out all over the place, and the fragrance of love wafts down our street to our neighbours, to our relations, and even to passers-by. Then our wisdom tree in the corner is bending down to us, loaded with sweet insights into the nature of life. We share those delicious fruits freely, even with the passers-by, without even planning to. When we have known tragic pain, learnt its lesson and grown our garden, then we can put our arm around another in deep tragedy and say softly, I know. They realise we do understand, and compassion begins. We show them the wheelbarrow, the fork and the spade, and the boundless encouragement. If we haven't grown our own garden yet, this can't be done. I have known many monks who are skilled in meditation, who are peaceful, composed and serene in adversity, but only a few have become great teachers. I often wondered why. It seems to me now that those monks who had a relatively easy time of it, who had little dung to dig in, were the ones who didn't become teachers. It was the monks who had the enormous difficulties, dug them in quietly, and came through with a rich garden that became great teachers. They all had wisdom, serenity and compassion, but those with more dung had more to share with the world. My teacher, Ajahn Chah, who for me was the pinnacle of all teachers, must have had a whole trucking company line up with their dung at his door in his early life. Perhaps the moral of this story is that if you want to be of service to the world, if you wish to follow the path of compassion, then the next time a tragedy occurs in your life, you may say, whoopee, more fertiliser for my garden. Or I had the thought that maybe you could just say, this is what I have. How can I work with it? Yeah. So a couple of lines I'd like to just go over. The part about saying we need to dig it alone is interesting. Because, we think of our practice as about supporting each other and helping each other. But in a certain kind of way, it turns out each of us has our own responsibility to deal with the challenges of our life. We can get help, but it's really what we're saying to ourselves in our mind, the stories we're telling ourselves about that tragedy and about ourselves in relation to it. That's in the privacy of our own mind that happens. So then what we actually do with our hands and our feet and our voice is kind of, it's a personal thing. It's each of us has to do it ourselves. No one else can really do it for us. They can help us a bit, but we have to do it. So I just thought that was an interesting point. And also where it says here that it's difficult and tiring work and that it can take a long time. I think that's very true. I'm 65 And I made some very bad choices in my 30s. And still, the harm caused by those choices, I am still in the process of healing with those people. Still happening. Just takes lots of patience sometimes. And it's better for it to take a long time than not happen at all, because some people cause harm and never get to heal that harm either within themselves or with the people involved. So sometimes it's a very long time. Even when we've made mistakes unintentionally, we maybe sometimes cause harm, or someone causes harm to us unintentionally. It's not always intentional. But it can just take years and years sometimes to slowly sort of translate that difficulty into a beautiful garden, to heal those relationships. It's just how it is. But our practice really teaches us patience. Patience is one of the great perfections of patience, which patience also has trust built into it, because you can only be truly patient if you actually trust yourself and your world, yourself and yourself in the world, that you can find a way to navigate it. So for those of us that have had great difficulties, this story can be a way of flipping, instead of, like Suzuki Roshi says, good is bad and bad is good. We can flip the story and see the bad as good. How can I take this bad and transform it into something good? So this story can help those of us that have had great difficulties. And if you haven't had a super great big difficulty yet, you may well get one. And then you can look back and think, what was that story about a truckload of dung? And being patient to just slowly with the wheelbarrow and the fork, move it around and plant vegetables and grow fruit trees and flowers in that dung. And it might take 30 years, but that's okay. Pardon, sorry about that. All right, this is just a very short story, just about a different way to just how you can just tell a story differently and make it not so bad. It's called the heroic sacrifice. When I was a school teacher, my attention was drawn to the student in my class of 30 who came bottom of the end-of-year exams. I could see that he was depressed as a result of his performance, so I took him aside. I said to him, someone had to come 30th in the class of 30. This year it happens to be you who made that heroic sacrifice, so that none of the other children had to suffer the ignominy of being bottom of the class. You are so kind, so compassionate. You deserve a medal. We both knew that what I was saying was ridiculous, but he grinned. He didn't take it as such an end-of-the-world event anymore. He did much better the next year when it was someone else's turn to make that heroic sacrifice. So that's kind of nice. Just going to make it so I can see people again. So would anybody like to comment or ask a question or share a story? I'm just going to plug this in. Can you hear me okay online?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, the other day I watched a very short clip of Yuval Harari, the Israeli historian who gives a lot of talks, and he also does about 3 months a year, I think, on meditation retreat. That's the first thing he sets aside. that. And he was saying exactly what your introduction about the people who tell stories are the most powerful ones. And he was talking about the people who it's not the scientists, for instance, that build a nuclear bomb. It's the people who tell stories that meant that all the people necessary to do that could be brought together. The technicians, the people who mined it, because it was all part of our war effort, and I suppose then listening to you a bit more today, I was thinking, wow, the most powerful people is the stories that we tell are the ones we sell ourselves. So the most powerful most powerful people are the most powerful person is you, the stories you tell yourself about things. So yeah.
No.
So I had one of those incredibly challenging experiences this week with starting a new job in a new hospital, learning 5 new systems, developing relationships with about 20 people, 5 or 6 different platforms of processing of information. And it would have been previously, I would have been quite overwhelmed by this, and the fact that I'm aging, I've taken on a pretty daunting task, but I was actually quite pleased with how my practice has helped through the course of the week to just remain calm, and every now and then it'd start to just percolate a little bit, and then stop, like, you're doing okay. The only expectations seem to be coming from within, and so I got through the first week, and it seems to be going okay, and everyone seems to be happy, including myself. So I suppose the point I'm making is that practice really does help to, as you say, that to seek that inner calmness and reflection, and here it is manifest. So.
Stories of benefiting other people, like the fact that you didn't tell yourself an overwhelming story, like, I can't do this, it's too much, I'm too old for this, or something or other. That you didn't tell yourself that story now has a rippling effect on all the people you're going to be working with and patients that you're going to be working with. So we don't do it just because it's nice to feel peaceful inside. We do it because it translates to that world that we can't understand out there. You can create more harmony out there in that world. Yeah. That's very good to hear. Jamal.
Thank you. So I had a question, but first off, Ajahn Brahm sometimes refers to that bottom of the class award as the Bodhisattva award he gives out to the person who comes last. I find that quite cute. I guess this is just a reflection from myself, and I guess maybe a few of us here of a not so aging generation. Something I've observed a lot in a lot of people of my kind of age is that I think we grew up with this story that was probably true in the sense it was based on the privilege that we had in the world from where we were and the point in history we were in, but this idea that we could do anything. This kind of I think it's sometimes disparagingly referred to as like kind of a snowflake kind of attitude to life. But I think there's some truth to that, in that, you know, me and everyone of my age, I feel like, was told, well, you can do anything you want. The sky's the limit. Whatever you want to do in life, it's just all up to you. Do whatever. And I've reflected in myself and a lot of people I've seen that I feel like that has developed a story of perfectionism, one where it's that if we have failed to do whatever it is we think we should do, that's somehow our fault. That well, everything was possible, so why didn't it happen? And I think it's such a pervasive story, and it's a story that I think runs through a lot of people, you know, the kind of millennial generation and younger. And I guess I'm wondering your thoughts on, you know, I think it's one thing to have a truckload of dung arrive and work out to deal with it and that kind of thing. But I think when you have a truckload of dung arrive and your entire life story is that any dung is unacceptable, that it's, you know, dung is not only annoying and frustrating and stinky, it's also, you know, the worst possible thing that could have happened. That I came bottom of my class one time, and that's now ruined my entire life. And, you know, because I'm no longer able to tell myself this perfection story, this story of, you know, I know for me it's a concept of greatness or anything else we've spoken about that, but it's like, yeah, that there are all these different things. And I guess it's yeah, I'm interested in any thoughts you might have on, you know, how to not only deal with the dung that arrives, but also deal with the stories that we tell ourselves about dung itself, about how, you know, what that means about us and that kind of thing.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because the Buddha's original teaching is dukkha, dung. Dung. That's his original teaching. But just on what you were saying about feeling we should be able to achieve incredible things, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the stories I was reflecting on during Zazen is we have this story of, it's been through the generations, I think, but particularly maybe the last couple of 100 years, that we can all do better. Every generation can do better, and everyone can keep achieving. So it's very sort of linear, going up, like going up a ladder. It's so interesting that we tell that story, because like the planet is round and it goes around a sun, and the sun is round and it's going around a galaxy that also is just going around. Like none of it's going uphill. None of it's going up in a straight line. And the galaxy itself is actually like moving around, and everything's kind of like wobbling about, but not going anywhere, a bit like Kin Hin, we're not going anywhere. And yet we've got this overlay of the story in society that's so permeating that I think people don't even notice the story. It just, everything's imbued with this story of achievement and success and doing better than the generation before you. And of course, we've hit that peak already. Like I've done less. I'm not as successful as my parents, and I think my children will have more trouble too, and their children have more trouble too. So we're even superficially, we're way past that. But it never was achievable in the first place. And it feels like a terrible trauma, that sort of story, that you have to succeed, rather than the sort of the more of the story that we're in a cycle of the seasons, we're in the cycle of a day, and our job is actually just to care for it. We're not going anywhere. We're not trying to go anywhere. We're just caring for this thing that's just going round and round. It's just a cycle going around each day, each month, each year. That's all it is. And our job is just to look after it, not to go somewhere else or to get somewhere. So, yeah. It's like there's no such thing as perfection, because perfection feels very static. Like, what is perfection? Things are just cycling around in relation to each other, going nowhere. It's very hard for modern society to consider what a life like that would be like, where you're just in harmony with the day to day and you're not trying to achieve anything. You're just wanting to be of benefit just of a benefit in that moment, and nothing more than that. And sometimes I like to have the image of a very old man or a very old woman in some little village somewhere, and they're very happy and content, and they haven't achieved anything particular except to care for their family and care for their community and the pets or the goats or the chickens and the vegetables, and they've grown food. No, we can have respect for a person like that. And they didn't earn lots of money or become a CEO or have lots of followers on social media or anything like that. They're totally happy, content, wise beings. And so, yeah, we need to tell, whole societies need to be starting to tell new stories, obviously. We've been telling terrible stories for quite a long time. And just one last point about perfection. Of course, you are already perfect. Bill?
Thank you, Neti. That was a really beautiful teacher. One thought I had was, I think there might be a third way with the dung. So one option was to, barrow it out into the backyard and dig it into the garden. One is to put it all over you and carry it around. And I think this might go to kind of the Eightfold Path and some of the Buddha's original teachings, but I think another is to not notice or to deny that it's there, and then just walk over the top of it every day and track it out into the world with you, and play down how serious that dung load in your front yard is. I wonder if you've got anything to say to that. Like, we actually sort of have to be mindful. Like, it's that metacognitive mindfulness of what we're doing. We need to actually see the dung there and deal with it.
That's such a great, yeah, that's such a good point. You have to see it in the first place. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us do walk around with blind spots about ourselves and do lots of harm because of our blind spots. There was a book I saw once saying that dissociation is the greatest psychological trouble for humans, and it just was not a popular book at all. Someone wants to read about that. No one wants to read that denial and dissociation and disconnection is in fact what causes us to do the most harm. That book didn't sell very well. I didn't even read it. But I saw it and the thought penetrated. Oh my gosh, I think there's deep truth to that. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that you could say that's our Zazen practice, is to really encourage us to see exactly what's going on as best as we can. See the dung. Yeah, thanks for that. Maybe we have time for one more comment or question. Anybody online want to comment or ask anything? Margaret. But you have to unmute first.
Right, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
As a school principal, every year at the end of the year, I used to talk to our year 6 students who were leaving the school and going on to high school. And sometimes I talked about, well, I often talked about never giving up. That indeed, as Bill was saying, we want children to believe they can do anything. I'm not sure about the wisdom of that now, but that's what I thought at the time. And not to give up, to keep on trying, because so often people do have to work very hard to achieve what they want. And doing good things isn't easy very often. So I used to tell the story of the frog that fell into a bowl of water, of milk, cream. and it was going to drown. It couldn't get out, and it swam round and round and round the bowl, on and on and on, and it nearly drowned a few times, and it kept saying, go on, keep going, keep swimming, never give up. And it went round and round and round so often that in the end the cream turned to butter, and it was firm enough that the frog could get out. And that really hit home. I've had a couple. I also used to tell about my climbing to Mount Everest base camp and how enormously difficult that was for me. But I kept saying, you mustn't give up, you mustn't give up. And it always hit home because I had a number of students come up to me later on, just out in the wherever I am, saying, do you remember me? And I remember that story you told me. But now I think I would say something differently. I think at the end of the story, I would say, but sometimes you have to recognize that you can't achieve what you want. And that's okay too, because that's reality. We can't all be what we would like to be. I always wanted to be a very successful cello player, and I never even learnt the cello.
Oh, that's a funny one.
Yeah, so it's never simple. It's never simple.
Yeah, I think that's great, Margaret, to add that at the end, you know, to encourage each other to patiently keep on trying, but also not to get too far ahead of ourselves, you know, a little bit more like day at a time, have a goal, just go day at a time, but not be too fixed on that goal, because the world does what it does sometimes, and you just can't go that way sometimes. So we need self-compassion and that acceptance that we actually are already okay, irrespective of whatever we achieve in our lives. We're still okay just as a human being. Just our existence is worthy of respect and care. So that's a good thing. That frog was just to love that frog, whatever happens. Thank you, everyone. And we'll just do a little bit of chanting and some bowing, and then have an informal goodbye together. Things are numberless. I vow to save them. Illusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. Hello, everyone. There's a lot of us here today.
All
Nice to see
boys,
you, Russ.
because it's too cold for girls.
Shame on us women.
And
Bye, everyone.
we're meeting at
Bye.
Tilly's, Margaret, if you want to come.
Look, Nettie, I can't hear a thing. I just can't hear a thing. I'm giving up pretending that I can hear, smiling vacantly and trying to make comments that might match what the person said to me. And yeah, enough.
All right. Well, I'm glad you made it.
I'm giving up on this goal.
Very good. Right, bye.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Russ.